Hi everyone, welcome to Creatively Uncorked Virtual. My name is Paige and today we're going to be painting ice fishing together. You can see it up in this corner up here. Alright, so if you ordered our art kit to go off of our website, you would have gotten the supplies, brushes if you requested, and a stenciled out canvas, as well as these instructions. These instructions help you find the video, how you found me, and then also it just kind of gives you a rundown on how we're painting this painting. So if you haven't kind of give them a little read over, go ahead and do that. Sometimes it helps before we get started. Also, if you found us on Patreon, it should have given you the supplies and all that stuff. So I'm actually going to go ahead and switch over so you can see the whole setup and how we're going to go about painting. So that is the profile view. This is the view we want. And of course, flip right there. Okay, so you can see our reference photo up in this corner. You can kind of see the profile view right there. It gives you a better idea of how my brush strokes are going and all of that good stuff. These are the paints we're using today, and of course I have my instructions with me. Sometimes they're nice to refer back to as well. For this painting, really all we need are two brushes. I have this kind of medium-sized flat brush, and then I have this guy. He's nice and square, and he can do skinny lines, he can do longer lines, all that good stuff. So you really only need these two brushes. You can use more if you would like. And of course, before we get started, just make sure you have a plate, you have a paper towel, and then you also have a cup of water. If you haven't worked with acrylic paints before, our paint brushes like to use water. It helps the paint blend a little bit better, and we also use it to clean out our brushes. That's why we also have a paper towel. I like to dip my brush in the water and on the paper towel to clean it out in between colors because we're only using two brushes, or I am anyway. And of course, you're also going to have this canvas right here. I have my cabin kind of sketched out on there. Your sketch out might look a little bit different, but for the most part, it'll get us there. All right. And before we get going, sometimes I like to have two plates. Honestly, sometimes three. I'm a messier painter. Some of you may only need one, but one works really nicely as we're going along painting. I like to use him to fan down wetter areas so I can keep painting faster and all of that good stuff. So just have that as well, kind of keep that in mind. And before we get started, I have my cup of water. Keep him off to the side. I'm going to dip my brush in the cup of water. I like to keep my bristles a little bit on the wet side. Like I said before, it helps that paint out. And we're going to get rid of some paint colors over here. We don't need brown yet. We don't need orange yet. We also don't need the yellow just yet. What we're mostly using is just white and phthalo blue. And we're going to start in the background. So we're not worrying about the trees, the ice house, the sun, none of that. We're just starting on the background first. And I'm going to be starting on the sky. And as you can see, the sky is like lighter blue. It goes a little bit lighter, it goes from dark to light, all that good stuff. And you can see the foreground, it's dark blue. So whatever you do with the sky, just make sure it's a lighter blue than what we're going to be putting at the bottom here. So I'm just going to slap some white on my plate. Clean it out a little bit. And I'm going to take some blue on my plate. So in the sky, we're never just taking straight blue and putting it on the sky. We're going to mix a little bit of white with it. So I'm making kind of like a lighter blue. And with this lighter blue, I'm just going to start slapping on the corners here. And with the sky, I'm doing horizontal strokes. I'm going to go a little bit darker in the middle here. And as you go back and forth, you can see those colors kind of start to blend in a little bit better together. And again, even this is a little bit too dark for my taste. So I'm actually just going to start, I'm going to take my white already right here. Might have a little bit of blue in it. I'm going to put some more white on my plate, Chris. And I'm going to start at the bottom. And as I start at the bottom with this white, I'm going to slowly work my way up. And as I work my way up into the blue, it'll do that kind of like nice subtle ombre blend for us. We can always add more blue, but for now, I'm just going with the white. So I'm blending up into this blue. And eventually I'm going to take that blue and I'm going to blend downwards into the white again. Kind of get my brush clean again. And what the key is, we're leaving a nice white area to add those yellows and oranges on there with the sun. If this were all blue and we tried to add like yellow and orange, it wouldn't show up that well, because orange is kind of a complementary color to blue, so when those mix together it goes brown. We don't want that. So we're just leaving a nice lighter area so that we can put that nice sunny sky in there. So I'm blending down a little bit with this blue. And I'm going to do one more blend back upwards. Take this white. And when I switched between the white and the blue, I always just made sure I cleaned my brush. Because if I didn't clean my brush before I jumped from the blue to the white, obviously it's going to, the whole sky is going to go blue. Not what we want. Kind of like that, what happened there. It's fine every once in a while, but we don't want that to be a habit, or else the whole sky would be blue. All right. So I have that on there. Now my next step is to add dark blue to the bottom here. And dark blue is almost as dark as black is, so these Sharpie marks might be a little bit hard to see after you paint over them. It shouldn't be too hard, but I'm just warning you a little bit in advance if you have like worse eyes or you're in a dark room or anything like that. So you should still be able to see these Sharpie lines, but just be sure you might have to just like wait for this to dry and resketch it on there. So I'm just taking some water, I'm taking some phthalo blue, and I'm filling in this whole bottom. So already on this camera you can kind of see, you still can see those Sharpie lines, but you might have some difficulty with it. And there's no trick to this madness. I'm really just taking blue and I'm doing horizontal strokes at the bottom here. I'm going to go back and forth quite a bit. I just want to make sure that my paint is all even. That helps it dry at a similar pace all across it. And I'm just going to make sure I have a nice sharp line here. You can still see the tip of our ice house. So once again, I'm just evening out this paint so it dries at a similar pace. What this does, it takes off like that excess paint. Helps it dry faster. And of course, if you have an extra plate on hand, just go ahead and give it a wave. We want this background to be somewhat dry before we move on to these next steps. Just somewhat. And acrylic dries fairly fast, so this shouldn't take too long. You may even get an arm workout for the day because of this. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my smaller brush that I had before, and I'm just going to start to add that orange and yellow into the sky over here, just because the white is still just a little bit wet, so it'll help me blend a little bit. I actually might use this larger one again. If you're using that brush again, make sure you get all of the blue out of your brush. Make sure it's nice and clean. And I'm going to reintroduce yellow. I'm going to put some yellow on my plate. And I start with the yellow before I do the orange. The orange kind of goes on top of it. And I'm not taking a lot of paint. I'm taking barely any paint on my brush. I just want this yellow to glide over the white. The yellow we want to be a little bit more subtle than the orange. You may pick up some blue, just make sure you have a clean brush. So again, I'm taking that yellow and I'm subtly adding it. Horizontal strokes. So I think I got a decent amount of yellow on there. I may take some of the yellow and go a little bit bolder with some strokes, just like a little bit more definite lines anyway. Like that. And I'm going to take this smaller brush. I like to use the smaller brush with the orange. Put some orange on my plate. And I'm gonna do skinny horizontal strokes in the cloud area, sun area. And just kinda anywhere is fine. Again, these you don't want to overblend, you don't want to overdo them. And down here I may just kind of blend it out a little bit. Add sometimes I like to mix the yellow and orange together too. Something is, you can always go back in with some yellow too. I like to go back and forth. So I'm taking some yellow. I'm going to blend it more towards it. Yellow it up again. Orange up the bottom here. And eventually we're gonna add a sun in there, but I'm gonna wait for this to dry before I add any sun. And lastly, I'm gonna go in with straight white, my good old filbert. I'm gonna blend inwards. Again, you're gonna have to clean your brush in between these. So I'm taking white and the filbert and I'm just kind of blending back into those lines to add some white streaks in there. It helps break it up a little bit. And later we'll put a sun in there, but that is good for now. So now we're going to start to think about the trees. These trees get put on before the ice house, the ones in the backgrounds anyway, because we want those to be dry before we put the roof of the ice house on there. So I'm taking my small brush, we're going to take some black, put him on the plate. I'm gonna map them out. So we can see that they kind of vary in size. So, get my reference photo up here for me. I'm just gonna take this and map it out a little bit. So the tallest tree, he goes like right here. The one next to him is a little bit over and shorter. And we got a few more kind of coming down here. This one's a little bit taller. Put a shorter one coming out here. Just like that. We like to have different sizes. And I'm actually going to switch to my filbert. I'm going to make him a little bit drier, because we're only going to be using the bristles for this part, these like separated bristles. I'm going to slightly dab into the black with the tip of the brush. I'm not using a lot of paint, like barely any paint. Black goes fairly far. And I'm just going to start to dab instead of swipe these brushes on there. Brush strokes anyway. I might swipe towards the bottom to fill it in. But you can see how that gives me like a textural effect. That's really what we're looking for. And I'm just going to kind of dab across this horizon line. Get those first ones initially in there. Plus that gives us just kind of a nice space in the back there. If you ice fish, you know there's another side of the lake and there's trees over there too. And I'm going to start at the top of these trees. What I like to do is I start a little bit lower than that point. So my first dab is going to be kind of a little bit low. I like to keep my trees pretty pointy. And I'm just going to go down in a zigzag. And I'm going to show you what not to do for trees as well. So I'm just moving slightly down in a nice zigzag here. I'm going to black it out a little bit. So I'm going to show you what not to do. I'm going to use this brush for that. So don't put your first dab up top. We don't want that. Put it a little bit low like that. And don't keep it very horizontal like this. That makes it very like sparse and very linear, and we don't want that. But we also don't want your zigzags to be so exaggerated that you can tell where they are. We want it kind of like a happy medium. We want it dab down a little bit and then lightly go down in that Z formation. Keep it pretty skinny right away, and then you can branch out. No pun intended. Haha. To the bottom, and then I just kind of like to scribble it off. So don't do. Just a little good visual for that. So I'm going to continue to do that with my other trees. I'll just give a quick dab here. And my brush is fairly bristly, as you can see. I have those separated bristles. They're not clumped together like what the water would do to them, so I like to dry my brush before I put the paint on there for this step. Keep doing the rest of these. And of course, you're watching along. If I'm doing these trees way too fast, go ahead and give it a pause, give it a rewatch, practice a little bit on a plate before you put it on your canvas. All that good stuff. Now I'm just going to fill them in a little bit at the bottom here. Give them a chunk. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this brush. I just want to make sure that the bottom here is nice and black, so I'm just going to touch that up really quick. And after we worked with black, sometimes your water gets a little bit dark. For from cleaning your brush. If you need to replace your water in your cup, go for it. Just gonna keep trucking along and make sure I use that paper towel to keep it nice and clean. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna map out that shadow. For my house, your bottom should be dry. If you have any wet blue paint, don't do this yet. Make sure that your bottom is dry before you do this. Got a little water there. And I'm first mapping the shadow out with just white. I'm not doing any orange, I'm not doing any yellow. I'm just taking this brush and white, and I'm gonna give kind of like a sideway V coming out where that door would be. So if you need to, I didn't Sharpie on my door just yet. I'm just gonna throw him on there really quick. That's where my door is gonna be so I can see. And I'm just gonna give a nice slight map out of a shadow. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fill him in a little bit with the white. Later, we will give him some hues of orange and yellow, but not now. So I have that shadow mapped out. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm also gonna fill in the doorway. I'm gonna switch to my small brush for this. So I'm gonna fill in my doorway with white. This helps us later when we wanna put orange and yellow in there. And I'm gonna map out my windows really quick as well. I'm gonna fill them in with white. Don't worry too much about being too perfectionistic with this. We'll touch it up around. Okay, so that is all good to go. Now I'm just gonna give it a second, think about what my next route of action is gonna be. I think I wanna soften up this shadow just a tad. I'm gonna take some of that light blue that we started with and some white. I'm just gonna take it and soften up the edges of the shadow. It's a little bright on the left, so I'm just softening it up. Not the shadow, I suppose it's a highlight, but touch it up a bit. Now we are ready to add the trees that are on this side. There's really just one tree, maybe a little tall one. I'm gonna add a tree on this side really quick of the lake. Finish off this side a little better. There. Now we are ready for another tree to come down here. Again, I'm just gonna first map out his trunk. Bring it all the way down to the bottom. Switch my brush. Dry him up a little bit. Just grab from the tip of the brush and do that dabbing all the way down. This tree is a little bit bigger, so he's gonna be a little bit more intimidating just because you have to go for a longer time. So again, just go a little bit down, start to branch out a little bit. This tree, you really wanna make sure, do not branch out really fast or you'll get a wide tree right here. This one has to make it all the way to the bottom. So this is gonna be a really skinny triangle. Sometimes I like to fill up those middles. So I'm continuing to make my way down. I'm just covering up this shadow, light. And I'm going to continue to bedab my way all the way down. Scribble up a little bit. And eventually we'll throw some snow on him. Not yet. I'm going to add a little bit of brush on the edge here. Just by dabbing. We'll put some snow highlights on that as well. I think I want to cover up this shadow a little bit more, this light anyway. I keep calling it a shadow, it's not. And now I'm going to switch my gears, clean the black out of my brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to fill in the lodge we have here. So I have my brown. I'm going to put that on my plate. Oddly enough, I'm going to take a little bit of orange too. Sometimes when I mix the orange with the brown, makes it lighter or better. And I'm going to take that brown, I'm just going to start to fill in anywhere where I don't see the windows. We'll get more detailed with it later, but right now we just want to kind of color block, fill the thing in. Get that first layer of paint on there. Sometimes he's a little transparent, a little light, hard to see, but we're just going to get this first layer on there so that you can't really see the blue behind it. All right, so we got that on there. I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush out again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the roof, which is made with white and a little bit of blue. And these black trees in the back should be dry by now, so I shouldn't have any problems. What I'm going to do is take some white and start to map out my roof here. Again, I'm just using white. I realize I'm going to fill in this T with brown too. I forgot to do that. Filling it in. And I'm going to add a white line over here. I'm going to add another stronger white line down here. And on this side as well. And I'm going to take this brush and I'm just going to kind of distress the roof a little bit. So I'm going to mix some like blue with the white. I may throw some burnt umber in there too, just to make a more subdued blue. I'm going to give it a little bit of a, just put some horizontal strokes in there. Pull some from this side too. Put a white line at the bottom. Put another white line up here. And you can play around with the roof as much as you want. I'll probably come back and put some more details on there, but for now, I'm just going to kind of keep moving because I can always focus on details at the end here. All right, so for now, I'm just going to leave him. I'm going to take my small brush. My sky should be dry enough for me to put a sun in the sunset. So I'm just taking this smaller brush, I'm going to twist it in a circle, add a little sun in there. Just like that. Now I'm going to take my smaller brush. I'm going to start to play around with the wood. So I'm mixing some orange and some brown together, and I'm just going to do horizontal strokes here. It feels a little too orange for me, so I'm going to bring it down a little. But you kind of see what I was doing since it was brighter. Same on this side. I'm just kind of marking where these boards would be. Then I add a tad bit of like white into it. And I'm going to drag the white kind of over like on the front side of the log cabin. And especially on the broad side too. This just adds a little bit more character to the log cabin, adds some more boards in there. I may take some straight orange even and just kind of like play with him in there too. And after that, I'm just going to take some black, this small brush right here, and I may just go in between these boards here, just to map them out, maybe go a little bit darker under here, just like that. That's all I'm going to do for now. And I'm going to completely clean this brush out. And now this is where I want to start adding color into the windows. So I'm going to reintroduce white because it's not quite as bright as I want it to be. So I'm going to take another second layer, introduce that at the top. And I'm going to slowly work my way into yellow. So I'm just slowly introducing yellow into these doors. Take some white. Take the white and drag it into the yellow. And we'll outline this door again so it gets a little skinnier, but for now I'm just adding color in it. I don't want to worry too much. And I'll add some orange at the bottom. Make it look like there's warmth. Okay. And you can play around with this until you get it to a point that you like it. I could do this for like hours, but I'll just quickly get it on there so you can see. Okay. So we want to do the same thing with the windows, so I'm reintroducing white to the top of the windows here. Do a little bit of yellow in the middle. Some orange at the bottom. Do your best to kind of blend it out. Like that. Now I'm going to take the same brush and I'm going to take the black and I'm going to outline the door. Clean it up a little bit. I'm going to do the same for the windows. They have a nice little bar in the middle. Give them a nice crisscross. Just like that. And I'm going to take the same small brush, make sure it's clean. I'm just going to start to add some like yellow into this shadow here. Shadow. Light. Just to show that it's coming from that doorway. Touch up the bottom of the cabin here. I'm going to go back to my filbert. Before I go into black again, I'm going to take some white. I just want to dabble some white up here on top of the ice house. Add some like snow texture. Just like that. And I'm going to take this black, do that same kind of tree technique, except what I'm doing here is I'm going to add some like bushes in the corner. So I'm just going to work up these different bush shapes that go in front. I'm just going to make sure that's kind of like filled in. I'm going to let this dry up a bit because we're going to put some white highlights on there. And while we're waiting for that to dry up, I'm going to put some white highlights on this tree over here. Make sure my brush is clean. Make sure this tree is a little dry so that it won't mix with the white. Same tree technique, same dabbing, kind of dry brush, except I'm going to just slowly kind of put some snow on each layer. Put some highlight down here. Make sure I kind of get it how I want it. And the black paint on the other side should be dry enough for me to throw some nice white highlights over here too. Fix that a bit. All right. Might throw some more white highlights and then we'll almost be done. All right. Just like that. And you don't want to overdo it on the highlights, so I think I'm going to stop myself there. And here we have an ice castle. just like that. And you can take some more time to kind of finish up any details that you would like. And of course, you can find us on creativelyancorked.com, where we have even more art kits that you can order. And you can also find us on Patreon as well. And we would love to see the final products of your painting. You can find us at Facebook under Creatively Uncorked again as well. And I would love to see you take a picture of your final product, send it to us. I'd love to see it. I love to see how they turn out as well. And I hope to see you next time. Bye.